What's going on, everybody? This is Toy Addict 26, and welcome back to Toy Addicts Anonymous meeting number 2. Today's guest needs no introduction. This guy is super talented. He creates awesome dioramas for your action figures from scratch with left around parts in the house. Super talented, very creative, old friend of mine. And let's see who we have here today.
Hey, my name is Elmer, but most of you might know me as Bodega Joe, and I'm a toy addict.
That's awesome, man.
Covering.
So talk to me a little bit about yourself. We all know that toy addiction, just like any other addiction, smoking, alcoholism, it's pretty much something that it could have pros and cons in life, right? For most of us, we're happy. I personally find a lot of happiness and just that warm, fuzzy feeling from collecting toys. But it's interesting to learn the stories behind other people and what they experience. So tell me, when did you begin collecting and what exactly got you started into, the world of toy collecting?
I think probably like many people, it starts at a young age. You grow up with toys. For me personally, I had an older brother, but he had friends where we lived. So he was always outside the house with his friends and I was at home a lot. And so like my toys became my friends, as sad as it sounds, but I would play with them and make up all these stories and, do the voices and everything. And then as I continue to grow, like I never really abandoned the toy life. I started collecting back in the day, like when you remember when eBay, I just want to preface this. I live right next to a highway. So if you hear loud cars going by, that's just the way it is. But
they're shooting Mayan season 3 outside.
Yeah, there you go.
Outside the apartment.
But like you remember the days of eBay, like when you would be able to pay with a money order. Like, do you remember those days?
Yeah, I do.
That's when I got into toy collecting because like I didn't have a bank card. And so I would go get the money order out and then send it to the address and then wait for my package to come in. And so it started with like, what was it? The McFarlane, like when they would make like the horror icons.
Was it like classics? No, that was NECA.
Like that they had like Candyman.
Damn, I'm trying to think. Yeah, and it was because Cult Classics was NECA's iteration of the horror staples. Movie Maniacs.
There you go.
That's what it was.
There you go. That they had like Candyman, they had Freddy
Krueger.
And so like back then, I would say that's like my clearest memory of me actually using my own money to start collecting and buying figures. So that's kind of where it started. And then after that, it just took off, especially once you get a job and you got more money coming in, then it's like, you're not asking any questions. You're just buying stuff.
Exactly. Yeah, that's when it gets scary, man. But so you're saying that basically your first toy was, well, I guess we're talking about toy collection because this is later on in life after you're an adult. But as a child, would you say there's any connections to your childhood in a specific toy that you came across later on in your life in adulthood that kind of triggered the need and that want to like just start buying toys?
I don't think there was any figure specifically. I think it was just the fact that I had always been just a fan of toys and having toys and especially like displaying them. And so like once I knew that I didn't have to depend on my parents to buy me any toys and I was able to get it for myself, that's kind of where it was like, okay, now I'm going to look to see what's actually out there. You're going to the stores, you're seeing what's on the internet in its, early days of online shopping. And that's kind of where it took off. But I don't think it was like a specific, turtles. And then I saw the turtles later on and that kind of led to my collecting.
Got it. So, like, basically, when did you realize that toy collecting had become an issue in the sense of an issue, when you realize that, oh shit, I'm buying too many toys. I wanted to bring this up because this happened with us recently. I think about a month ago. I asked you about a particular toy and you
Yeah.
had opened it, and it was
Mhm.
the ice troll from
Yeah.
Mythic Legions. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to pull the trigger when the pre-orders were out for the Horseman, because it was like paying ahead of time, like a year in advance. I think because of COVID or whatever, it might have taken even more than a year to get that in hand. But I asked you,
I think I got it before COVID actually.
you did?
Yeah, I think
But it
so.
was delayed though.
Hmm.
It didn't deliver a year after. I think it was a little after a year, if I'm not mistaken. But
Okay.
but I remember I asked you about it, and it was funny because you mentioned that you didn't even remember
Yeah.
that you owned that piece.
Yeah. As
And
big a piece as it is, that box is huge for me not to remember. Like it shook me. And this is like, I mean, as we go on in the story of like my addiction and the highs and the lows, I think this was coming off of when I finally got to the point in my life where it was like, okay, you don't need every figure you see, you don't need to, try to complete sets and get every toy out there. And for you to bring it up, and just the realization of like, I really didn't remember I owned this. So much so that I went back to the text messages, because I remember I was like, no, usually when I get a new figure, I hit up my friends and I let them know about it. And I was just scrolling to see in my phone, okay, at what point did I purchase the Istro? And when I finally found the picture of me having it, it blew my mind. It was like, wow, like this was like the depths of the addiction, where I literally didn't remember I've ever bought it.
like you lose fucking track
Yeah.
of what you have. And it's funny because recently on our first episode, I spoke to Eric Mays from Four Horsemen, and it was funny because his wife and him just purchased a new home, and he was telling me about he has about 44 tubs
Wow.
full of action figures, and he absolutely has no idea what's in those 44 tubs.
Wow.
So,
Yeah.
so it's like
And
when it comes to that point, that it's a problem. You know that
yeah,
you're definitely
exactly. Exactly. And
addicted.
has that ever happened to you? Have you ever literally like purchased something and then forgot, or even go as so far as you forgot you bought it and then you buy it again? Has that ever happened to you?
That has absolutely happened to me. Um, Another thing that's happened has been like where I'm looking for something and I come across the item, but it's like I thought I had it loose, and it turns out I never opened it. You know,
Mhm.
and that's one of the other struggles that was going to mention is you got the openers and you
Yeah.
got the mint and boxers. I don't consider myself a mint and box guy, but the struggle that I have is when there are particular toy lines that strike a significant chord when it comes to nostalgia with me and things from my
Hmm.
childhood, like the Thundercats Ultimates and stuff like that. I feel the need to have one packaged and one open because I see that as I grow older later on, when my children are adults, it could be like, oh, look, this is dad's collection. And, I hope that rather than flipping them and selling them and shit, they would kind of display them and remember dad and just have like those key trophy pieces that I had in package to
Hmm.
kind of carry on that memory. So, and pass the torch on to my kids. I mean, look at me. I'm 45. I got two men already. I got a 21-year-old and a 19-year-old. And then I'm starting over with my baby Alyssa. So I
Yeah.
guess talking more about her because she's the one that's gonna be an adult by then. By the time she's an adult, my boys will be old men.
Hmm.
but but basically, that's a struggle that I have when
Yeah.
there's certain items that just look amazing in package. Perfect example, like the new Universal Monsters line from NECA
Okay.
that's coming out. The Frankenstein that's coming out. It's out in Walmart now, but it's a color
Hmm.
version. The packaging is beautiful because it's a recreation of the original cinematic poster.
Hmm.
So, dude, I gotta have those boxes. You know what I mean? Some people, what they do is they pull the figures out of the box and then they kind of put the box behind the toy. I don't really have the space to do something like that. I'd love to do that eventually when I have my nerd cave, when I
Yeah.
purchased my home. But that's a struggle that I have. I don't know if do you have that kind of struggle with any kind of toy line?
I've never, yeah, like I've never been part of the camp of like you need one in box or one to open. I basically open everything I buy.
Open
There
your
are
shit.
some pieces like exactly there's some pieces where it's like if it's NECA or if it's Figmas or Mezcos, I'll open it, but I'll keep the box. But like when it comes to like a Marvel Legends, like those boxes just get thrown out. Like I don't have that issue. Because I don't know. I think that the closest that I came would be buying doubles just for the intent on selling it one day. But even that
Right.
proved to be a problem because like in just kind of like reflecting on the whole addiction part, even selling stuff is like part of the problem. Like I have tubs of things that I know I should sell. I know that either they've never even been in front of the camera. I've just opened them, posed them a little bit, and put them in a Ziploc and put them away. And it's like they're just sitting there. But part of me, it's like I I, I find it hard to even sell them. And I think that it's kind of part of like that addiction
Yeah.
with the lifestyle.
You have a significant attachment to it. And I think, there was one point in life where I was like that, where it
Mhm.
was like, I swear I'm not going to sell this piece, right? But I think as adulthood progresses and as more responsibilities arise, you will find yourself having to make those difficult choices.
Yeah.
I, for one, I did it about a year and a half ago. I wiped out like 70% of my collection, man, just because I wasn't happy in the place I was in my life. One of the reasons why I've been idle on my channel and whatever, because I just wasn't content with life. I found a person, that was my person, and we're married now, and it's just my whole perspective in life changed.
Mhm.
So toys was like a secondary thing, and it was more of like a means to achieve a different place in my life that I wanted to be at, and I was
Yeah.
able to do that. I mean, I sold Castle Grayskull, I sold all my Motu classics, I sold pretty much every Hot Toys that I had, and probably kept one or two out of like 30 Hot Toys that I owned.
Mhm.
And I would do it again, in a heartbeat. A good friend of mine, Armando, he, well, the last time I seen him like 5 years ago, he had a significant attachment to anything. And when I'm talking about anything, I'm talking about it go all the way down to like McDonald's toys. Like
Mhm.
he would have like the McDonald's collections of certain things, and he wouldn't want to sell those things. So
Yeah.
that's when I think it could become detrimental, and it could be
And
harmful. You
to
know,
to to, to touch on what you mentioned about like as you grow up, then you're faced with these issues of like especially when you have responsibility you need to take care of, but then there's the addiction that you're trying to balance. And I think that was really like my wake up moment, because like in 2019 towards the end, we my wife and I we adopted a kitten, right? And I would say maybe a week or two after that, this was like in September, the cat got really sick. So we spent thousands of dollars taking the cat to the vet, going and having it checked out to see what was wrong with him. And then, shortly after, my wife, she loses her job. This is the end of 2019. 2020 comes, I'm working, and then all of a sudden COVID happens. And I'm an asthmatic, and for me to catch a regular cold, I get sick because it turns into bronchitis, and I usually get sick for like a few months where like I'm down and out. And so it came to the point where it was like, I work in a nursing home, and that was like ground zero. I wasn't going to be, around people that could get me sick. So I had to quarantine. I had to self quarantine. And in that time, it's like, okay, now I'm relying on the savings that I have, and a big chunk of it had already been put towards the cat, put towards kind of like evening out my wife's loss of income. And now like I lost income. And so like I put in for unemployment, they denied me. And it was a moment where it was like I kept paying everything off, and then we were getting to the point where like we were having discussions of, you know, because we were so quarantined that we didn't go downstairs to do the laundry. We were actually doing it in the bathtub and cleaning the clothes in the bathtub, hanging it up. And so my wife and I, we had a discussion, and she was like, you know, there's a portable washer. Do you think with that, you know, maybe we should get it? It'll make cleaning clothes easier. And it was like, I had to decide between, do I spend money on that, or do I spend money on us having food and having the bills paid coming up? And there was a moment where like I was in this room, just like my art room where I, you know, work on everything, and I had the closet door open, which is where I have my collection, and I looked at that collection and I felt such like, I don't know, it was such guilt over all the money that I had spent, and here I am in a tough situation, and it's like I have nothing really to what's the phrase I'm looking for? None of it was bringing me any joy at this point. It was like I was actually looking at the figures and getting angry, but then there was still that part of me that it was like, okay, I got to sell these, and then you have the addiction come in, saying, you know, and I you know, because I'm religious, and I started praying, and I was just like, Lord, like, you know, I've let this overcome me, you know, and I want it to be where I don't let it control me, that I can have it under control. And then shortly after, you know, miraculously, like they sent me an email saying my unemployment was approved after they had denied me. And I was like, you know what, from this moment on, I'm not going to look at toys saying I need. And it helped me to the point where it's like, now if I see Marvel Legends, if I see NECA's coming out with something, I don't have that need to like, I want to buy this. I need this. I want to have this in my collection. And I think that the whole part of kind of being able to let go of things, I think it does have to do with like my childhood of like, these toys were really what I had growing up that brought me happiness. And you know, I grew up like you didn't get rid of your toys. Like it was all you had. You had to, once you got it, you had to wait until the next time you got it to get more. And that's why I brought this figure from my past, just to show. This is the foot soldier, right? Mm-hmm. He broke, and this is how my dad fixed it. He put a nail through the legs. And this was the fix. And it's like I'm 7-8 years old playing with this toy that has a nail through the legs. And it's like
DIY.
Yeah. and so I think that's where it kind of came from, the fact that it became so hard to just let go of it, you know?
Right.
Because it's like and it's not easy. And I think that's when you really see the ugly side of the addiction, when it's like you're up against the wall, and it's like I feel this force pulling me from doing what I know I should be doing.
Yeah, you know? I know what you're saying, and there are things that I have attachments to, but I guess just you know that there's things in life sometimes that life is a school, you know, and for the longest time I was doing something that I thought was what I should be doing, which was I was doing toy reviews. And I would spend hours and hours inside the spare room recording toy reviews. And yeah, I had a lot of people that liked my videos and stuff, but I never got to that point where, you know, I had sponsors and I had, you know, plackets coming from YouTube and all this stuff. I couldn't live off of it. So I had to come to a point, and, you know, where I had to accept that was kind of going nowhere. But you know, now that I'm at a different place, you know, I have my child, my career is going in a positive direction. I feel like that's something I built from the ground up, and I just couldn't let it be. So, you know, I thought about, you know, thinking outside the box and evolving my IP into something else, and, you know, bringing this passion of toy collecting, but giving it a twist, or like just seeing that unspoken or that unknown story from all
Yeah.
our collectors across the world.
And it's a great idea because everyone's gonna have a different story to tell, you know. There's gonna
Absolutely. I
be
mean,
people who are
that
in all
foot
different
soldier
types of
right there,
situations.
that foot
Yeah.
soldier right there, man, that DIY,
Here,
that's
look,
awesome because it's a
let me
memory
show
of your
you.
father.
You remember this guy?
Oh, that's the original Monstar.
Yeah, and then I got Buzzsaw too.
Oh,
This belongs to my
wow.
brother, and this was mine. And
That
then
is
like
so awesome.
the head still flips.
Wow. Unfortunately, I don't have any toys from my childhood because one day, I think I was like 13 or 14, I came home and my father had put all my toys in a box and he gave them
Mhm.
away to some family, dude. And he basically told me, because he was just this macho Cuban, he was like, oh, it's time for you to play with girls, not with toys.
Mhm.
Um, and I think one of the reasons why I gravitated towards toy collecting was because I feel that I was pulled out of that world without my consent, like it was forcefully taken from me,
Mhm.
and I felt that emptiness, that void that I had to fill. So now when I get toys, they just, I don't know, it's just a connection with my childhood that it's unexplainable, but it's just a joy. You know what I mean?
And that reminds me because like that whole stigma of like you're supposed to be acting a certain way by a certain age. I faced the same thing. Like I remember I had a girl coming over to the house, and one of my friends he told me, he was like, because I had I had finally purchased the GI Joe headquarters,
Oh my
and
god.
I had it like on a trunk, and I had it set up, and I had the Joes just posed everywhere. I remember my friend, he was like, yo, if you're having a girl over, you need to hide that. And I was like, why? Like, if she ain't down with that, then, I don't want her coming in the house. Like,
Yeah.
because it's like you have to be this person because somehow if you're into toys, it's like childish and stuff like that. But I love being able to like display figures, and I think that was also one of the draws into the lifestyle was like, because I grew up, my mom, she taught me art and we would draw side by side, and then eventually my wife and I, one time we were at a pizzeria, and we were talking about building a set, and the first set I ever built was a set for The Godfather for his funeral, because I had bought, I think it was McFarlane made a Godfather figure, and then when I got him, he was like literally this big, this tall. And so I was like, the only thing he's good for is like lying down. Like he'll be short next to everybody else. And we were having pizza, and she was like, why don't we do a funeral for him? And so like we had like pizza boxes and contact paper, and that was the first ever diorama I did. And then later on, when I found out about foam, it was like, oh, okay, this is like a whole new world, and recently, like now I'm dipping my toes in 3D printing, and it's been good. But I think that the danger that came with having that skill of making dioramas was that it led to even more toys being purchased, because now it was like, okay, I built this thing, who's going to look good in it? Like maybe this guy, and then you get
Yep.
to the point where like I remember, and this is when like the warning signs should be going off, like when you start rationalizing purchases that you absolutely don't need. Like I would go into Toys R Us with my boy, and I'd be like, "Oh yeah, I want to buy that figure." And it's like a $20 figure, but the only reason I want it is because it comes with like a fire extinguisher. So I have no plans of the figure at all. I just want that little fire extinguisher, and it's like that's when it's like there's something brewing there.
Yeah. Well, that's when it comes to things like that, that's when you go on like a Mercari or an eBay and you buy the figure loose, and
But this
where
was
you
before that. Well,
yeah.
not before eBay, but before
No, but I
Mercari.
hear you that, and that's, and it's interesting because you have a very creative eye, and you've done some amazing toy photography that I honestly am shocked that you haven't been approached by anybody to do like legit work, because you've done some really awesome stuff with the toy photography. You did this awesome piece of like Lionel facing off one of the Mythic Legion's cave trolls, and
Oh,
and
that to
and
this day is like my favorite picture I've ever taken.
yeah, man, I have that framed up in my room that you gifted to me a few years back. And I mean, when I look at toys, there's certain toys that I look at, and it's
Mhm.
not just like, oh, that's a cool figure. It's like, oh snap, I can I can do this picture of that guy doing this or in this battle. So in my head, I'm already thinking about like a sequence or like a battle scene or a diorama or some way of displaying it in a dynamic way because I'm looking at it from a creative set of eyes. You
Mhm.
know, I'm not just looking at it as a collector because you and I were both artists, and so we see things, you know, through a different type of lens.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the things that attributes to my toy addiction. And there's two things. One is the, oh shit, if I don't get it right now,
Mhm.
it's going to be 2 or 3 times the price on eBay next year. And the other one is, oh shit, that's going to look sweet next to this guy or
Yeah.
fighting that guy or, you know, on this diorama that I have or displayed next to this guy. So it's a never ending struggle. And then
Mhm.
there's the nostalgic connections, right? Universal Monsters. My entire life, I've always wanted to have. I remember from when I was a little kid. I think I got. I think it was like a creature from the Black Lagoon or something like that. It was like these 3 3/4 figures that, you know, it was like the Star Wars figures, like 5 points of
Mhm.
articulation. But I always had this knack for Halloween and horror and monsters and stuff. And throughout all my years and in my adulthood, I've never seen like nice, good, detailed iterations of these universal monsters. Yeah, there's been a lot of attempts at it. Sideshow did some stuff back in the day when they weren't even doing 12-inch figures. They were doing like, they had like a 9-inch, 10-inch line, and they
Mhm.
did like all the universal monsters. But for some reason, I guess back then, the Bela Lugosi um, estate
Dracula.
not
Mhm.
allow his likeness. So
Mhm.
you couldn't find a Dracula that looked like the actor Bela Lugosi. They always had to mess with the sculpt, and it was just a vampire, but it wasn't Dracula, not the Dracula that I remember from my childhood. And I
Mhm.
used to watch the black and white horror movies with my grandfather, which passed in my early teens. So, you know, anything that has those connections to those fond memories of those loved ones that are no longer here with me, they're significant. And when it came
Yeah.
to like this Universal Monsters line that NECA's doing now, knowing the quality and the detail, the sculpt and stuff, and seeing this Frankenstein that they've shown so far is the only one they've shown in complete detail, is just freaking amazing. The the expressions they've got, like the really weird Frankenstein like
Mhm.
expression that he had and stuff, and the holding the flower, and you know, and Mezco did a Frankenstein not too long ago, and it was really cool, but it was kind of tiny, and those figures were like $90. I mean, this Frankenstein's $30, and I could really see myself getting this line, not to the extent of like getting Hunchback of Notre Dame and all that, but the quintessential Universal monsters, which is werewolf, Frankenstein, creature from the Black Lagoon, Bride of Frankenstein, and Bela Lugosi Dracula. Oh, and the Mummy, of course.
Yeah.
Those, to have those like really awesome iterations, like immortalized in 3 dimensional form,
Mhm.
that's something that is like, okay, I don't really collect monsters anymore, but I gotta have that.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the struggle. Right now, we were just talking, you and I yesterday. Super Seven just revealed the Silverhawks line.
Mhm.
Now that's something that I've known it was in the pipeline for about 3 or 4 months now, because Super Seven has been selling glassware and they've been selling T-shirts and coasters with the Silverhawks logo on it since November of last year, actually, in secret. And so I knew it was coming. It's just a matter of time. And now that they're out, it's like, holy shit, these things are amazing. And then
Mhm.
they remind me of the 80s, because in the 80s, I had Silverhawks, and anything that has that connection to the 80s, which for me was the golden era, you know, Thundercats, more than anything, Masters of the Universe, G.I. Joe, now Silverhawks. There's talk of possibly them doing Tiger Sharks, which was another, um, you know, this was like an anthropomorphic um, universe that Rankin Bass Studios was trying to create. They started with Thundercats, they went into Silverhawks, and then the final thing was Tiger Sharks, which was that was like the tail end when it was losing steam and people weren't as interested. But they went from cat people humanoid to uh, bird like humanoid people to like amphibian fish slash
Mm-hmm.
people. So eventually, I think all that stuff is going to be reintroduced into the toy world, and those are the struggles that I face as a collector. Having
Yeah.
those nostalgic connections to certain things that are being done today. And let's face it, nowadays, the variety of toys that are out there,
It's just so much. It's just
it's
so
like
much.
a kid
Like
in a
it's hard to
candy store.
choose. Yeah.
Do you remember that show? I think it was in the 90s, where it was like, no, I'm sorry, it wasn't a show. It was a sweepstakes. And I want to say it was either Playboy or Toys R Us, where you would win the sweepstakes and basically you would get 15 or 30
To run
minutes
down
to
the
run
toy
down the
aisles
aisle
and
and
just
fill your
yeah.
shopping. Dude, that's what it feels like nowadays to
Yeah.
be a toy collector.
Except you're
There
paying
is
for it.
exactly, but there's so much shit out there, and it's like everything you could think of is just like a click away from your mouse, kind of.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's a big struggle, and just like I mentioned with the Universal monsters, GI Joe was a big thing for the 80s, right? And
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately, GI Joe went away for a very long time after they did the movies, and they kind of tanked and stuff. And everybody was wondering what's going on with GI Joe. And now Hasbro brought this GI Joe Classifieds line into the limelight, and they've just been knocking it out of the park, just
Mm-hmm.
releasing figures. It's a weird kind of distribution because they're doing like 2 figures at a time. It's not like other ways where they do 4, 5, 6 guys at a time. But I have here, we were talking about it, Zartan.
Mm-hmm.
This guy is awesome. Yeah, he looks kind of modern, but the fact that he has things from the 80s, like you could open the little backpack and he actually has the little mask inside the backpack, all those little nods to the 80s, to the toys I
Yeah.
used to play with. It's amazing. So then I find it to be a struggle to turn away from a toy line like this,
Yeah.
because
And
it's just
that's what we were talking about yesterday over the phone, because like I told, like we were talking about the GI Joe line, and I told you that I haven't bought figure since last summer. That's the last time I bought any figure, and it was the what is it, the Venom Snake from Metal Gear Solid 5. And the only reason I bought it was because I had already put money down for pre-order. And so like my birthday is next month, and my wife, she was like, well, is there anything particular that you want? And I've just been fiending and like drooling at the mouth, just watching these GI Joe figures just pass by me. And I was like, you know what? I want you to get me a GI Joe figure, because like for you, like when you're talking about nostalgia, that was like nostalgia for me. I remember like my favorite movie of all time is GI Joe the movie, like the cartoon movie, because when I was little, my mom, she actually recorded it on VHS, like off the TV, and so we would just watch it whenever we wanted. And I had the pleasure of meeting Sergeant Slaughter and having him sign my copy of GI Joe the movie. So like the hardest thing for me has been sitting here watching all these things come out and not buying it, and because I'm like, the thing that goes into my head, like you were speaking on earlier, was like, you already imagine this is what I'm going to do with it once I have it. And for me, that was like a big problem when it came to the addiction, because I would set these plans. Okay, I'm buying this figure because if I buy this figure, I'll make this set, then I'll take this picture. And then it's like a lot of the times it's like I ended up buying figures that were never even used. And so then the pile starts growing and growing and growing. But I think that something about kind of taking this sabbatical on buying figures, I think it makes me appreciate each figure that I get, because it's like, it's not this oversaturation of, I just got a toy haul and there's like 20 things in there. It's like I got this one thing and I feel like I'm able to appreciate it more and actually, do more with it. And
Absolutely. You know what, I relate with you because we've talked, and I want to say I for like a good year, man, I didn't buy any toys at all because I had other goals. I was
Mhm.
trying to get things done, and you know, I literally moved into an apartment that was completely barren, and we furnished it. We got appliances, we got electronics, just because I stopped collecting. I just went cold turkey, you know.
Mhm.
And now little by little, I've been getting lucky and picking up some pieces. Um, Something that happened, which I don't know if I had mentioned to you, I was on Facebook the other day, and it was I came across a post, and it was some group, and it was called something like Master of Destruction Waffles, and it was the Mega Waffle. I guess they use the word waffle because they can't use the word raffle on
Mhm.
Facebook because they'll be banned or whatever. But long story short, I'm looking at the selection of things that you could win, and I see a bunch of things from Motu Classics that unfortunately I parted ways with, and I would like to, have again. And I don't know if
Mhm.
you've noticed on the secondary market, because of Motu Origins, Mattel has released the Motu Origins, which is like the smaller version of Master of the Universe, but they come on like a little card back that looks just like the Motus from back in the 80s. So
Okay.
now it's like this entire world has been reintroduced to Master of the Universe, and it's people that didn't know about Motu Classics' existence. So because of those Motu figures being at retail, the price for the Motu Classics has skyrocketed, dude. I'm telling you, like, you can't find any Motu Classics figure out there for less than $50 to $60, and then A-listers and shit like that. You're talking about 200. There's even figures that are $300. Battle Cat, which was one of the figures that I sold,
Mhm.
is going for like $300 minimum, right? So whatever, I had a little extra cash, and I was like, let me see what happens, dude. And it was like a five spot, $5 for each spot, whatever. I took a gamble. I threw $50, dude, at that thing, and I won. Out of 139 entries,
Wow.
I won, and I won 15 points. And basically, those 15 points, you go and kind of like at Chuck E. Cheese, you redeem them towards a catalog of items.
Mhm.
And within those items were like so many grill pieces that I was missing, like the Filmation Skeletor Ultimate from Super 7, which has not the Mattel version, but the second version, and it has the laughing face where he's like, huh. And he has like
Mhm.
a really nice 80s card back. The guy had Battle Cat. And then he had two Mythic Legions that I really wanted to get from the new line that came out. So long story short, dude, for $50, I won that raffle, and I got like $300 worth of merchandise.
Mhm.
So, I was lucky in that way to get those figures that I couldn't get before because there was no way in hell I was going to pay $300 for Battle Cat. But, it's crazy because now little by little, my wife's always telling me like, "Oh my god, it's like every other day you get a box." And I'm like, "I know, babe, but it's just $20." Yeah, but $20 adds
Mhm.
up and blah blah blah.
Yeah.
And we have this whole discussion where she's like, "Well, with all the toys you bought, you should give me a Louis." And I'm like, "Yeah, but a Louis is like a grand." Yeah, but a Louis I use. I can go to the mall, put stuff, I carry it, I use it.
Mhm.
All you do with your toys is just they sit on a shelf. But you know, it's difficult when there's like a non-collector looking at things,
Mhm.
because they don't understand the significance of collecting, what it means to us. Cornboy was telling me how it's something that makes him happy, and his
Yeah.
wife understands that if it makes his husband happy, he's not out there doing drugs or hanging out with his boys, getting drunk, flirting with women. He's collecting, and he's at home, and he's present. It's just that something that makes him happy. If my wife, um, she has this thing now with lounge fly backpacks, like these Disney themed lounge fly backpacks, and I've got her like 6 or 7 of them already. So I'm like, okay, so you can collect these, and I'm gonna collect my shit. But it's
Mhm.
like they're never going to understand unless they collect themselves. um but it's something that I took that sabbatical, but I see myself little by little, I'm falling down that slippery slope. And
Mhm. And it gets scary. It gets very like you could very easily get back to that line that you didn't want to cross before. And I kind of see it like with me, like I would think about, oh, I would love to travel to another country, or go do this, go do that, and sometimes I would think like, man, it seems like you really have to have a lot of money to do these things, and then you stop and you think, and it's like, but wait a minute, if I literally stopped buying toys, that money that I'm putting towards that could have easily gone to taking a trip somewhere, and because like it's thousands of dollars. It's like, an $80 toy from Figma, or a $100 toy from Mesco. Yeah. That stuff adds up, and it does. It's hard. It gets to the point where it becomes hard to juggle, because I know, like, for us, yes, there is this happiness that we feel and everything like that, and there can be a lot of worse things that we can be doing and addicted to, but at the same time, it's like, a functioning alcoholic is still an alcoholic. He might be able to go home and spend time with his family and make sure the rent is paid and all that, but he still has a part of him that's in control rather than him in control of it. And I think that personally, that's where I found myself. It was like, yes, I'm doing these things, yes, they make me happy, but I had lost control over that thing that was controlling me, that thing of walking into a Toys R Us and making sure I didn't leave empty-handed, or if I went in this spot, I would have to go and have something that I buy. That's why, like, Comic-Con was like the worst for me, because it's like you have people there and you have figures on sale, and the next thing you know, it's like, how much did you spend? Well, let's not talk about that. Let's not mention numbers, And it's like you have a book bag full of toys, and yeah, it can.
But now that you mentioned that about money, man, like, is there a particular, I would coin it a shame piece. Is there any piece in your collection that you are ashamed to admit how you obtained it? Like, for example, did you pay disgusting amounts of money for it, or altered on bills to purchase it?
I've never neglected the bills, but there is a shame piece in terms of spending a disgusting amount of money for something. And the fact was, it was used. It wasn't even new. There was a figure, because like I love the Death Note series. It's an anime, and it was an anime that it means a lot to me, because it was one of the last things that me and my mom, we kind of shared in before she passed away. Like, we watched the entire series, and they made two figures from that series. There was like a Ryuk figure and a Light figure. And on eBay, I found the Ryuk, who he's like this demon guy. Like he's a god of death, and he's like, you know who he is? He's like bluish gray. And okay. So I found someone selling him, and I feel shame just admitting how much I paid. He was selling it for $125. Used. Used. It wasn't loose. It was in a box, and it was used, and I think it was like from Mexico, or I can't remember. And so, like, when I got it in hand and I was messing with it, some of the parts just started falling off. And it was like, okay, I could return it and get a refund, or I can keep this figure. And just the addiction of wanting the figure, it was like, no, you're keeping it. You're not sending it back. And that, to me, it's like the most, like, it's literally a figure that if I go to pose it, I have to be so gentle with it, because like his arms will fall off real easy. It's almost like if you've ever seen Jingle All the Way, when Arnold, he goes into that warehouse where they sell all the Santas, and then he opens up the Turbo Man and it's speaking Spanish, and it just breaks apart. It was kind of like that.
Wow.
And I kept it because I didn't want to send it back. I wanted the piece so much, and it's one of those pieces where it was like impossible to find because no one's selling it.
Yeah.
And so I kept it.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, for me, I'm pretty sure, like, that's one thing, I guess, getting old sucks, man. I tend to forget things. It's funny because my wife was just mentioning yesterday, like, you remember that time that we went to the mall and you were wearing that shirt that you had barely worn, and you had those kicks on, and they didn't match with your shirt. And I was telling you, why'd you wear that? And I'm like, wait a minute, I have no clue what you're talking about.
It's okay.
Like,
I get the same thing.
I don't save shit in my hard drive like that. Specifically, like insignificant moments. Because if it's something like, the day I proposed, or, the day we first met, or things like that, but just a random ass day, like I don't remember all that stuff. And then my wife's like, oh, of course. But I'm sure that if I would ask you right now, you would know every single Thundercat figure and every single map. And I'm like,
it's like 2:45 when I pulled the trigger on this.
I'm like, dude, it's apples and oranges. But anyways, my point is, like, I know that there's things that I have paid disgusting money for, but
you dropping any numbers? You gonna drop any numbers, any figures?
Well, to be honest, I've never really bought things like scalper wise, where it's like, oh, I want this figure that's $20 and I just have to have it and I'll pay $150 for it. I've never done that. I want to say the most expensive thing I dropped, and it wasn't all at once, was like $700 on it was like a Lobo premium format statue from Sideshow. But I'm talking about, this thing was like, back then when I got it, I think I had a picture of Christopher. He was smaller than the box.
Did you ever have it like displayed, or was
absolutely displayed it in my Curio? Beautiful piece, but I ended up selling it. But it was one of those things where I was paying like a layaway type. It was called FlexPay through Sideshow, and I've had a lot of pieces like that where a long period of time, when you add it up, it was a lot of money. But I didn't feel it that way because I was paying over time. So it was little by little. But yeah, I think that's probably one of the most expensive pieces that I owned. And it's crazy. Everybody has their stories. Like you bought a figure that you absolutely had to have. I guess for whatever reason back then, they were very scarce, and that was the only one that was there. And you took a major gamble, mister, because I've always had bad experiences and heard a lot of bad things about buying things from Mexico. There's like a lot of corruption in customs. Things tend to get lost. I don't know if I told you, I bought an exclusive Mezco 112 Collective Gomez figure that was actually this guy right here. Well, actually, this is kind of a shame piece because, okay, this guy goes for $80.
Okay.
But he was like a one-off exclusive from Mezco. It's basically Gomez, their mascot, which is like a roach, but they call them the Gomez of Death. So they put him in the Game of Death Bruce Lee jumpsuit, right? So by the time I got him, I was able to pre-order him. I'm tracking it. I'm waiting for it to come. FedEx loses it somewhere at the Pennsylvania distribution center. Like, it stops tracking. There's no more updates. And I'm like, shit. Out of all the Gomez figures that they've done, this was the first one that I jumped on, right? So I'm excited to own it, to see what the hype's about, because a lot of people have been buying them and stuff. And I love this one. He came with all these effects. He comes with like a heart. Like if you pull your heart out, and it's like blood effects and all this. And I'm like, shit. And I kind of gave up on it because FedEx it didn't go anywhere.
So did you get your money back on that?
I did, and one of the things that pissed me off was I contacted Mezco and I told them that FedEx lost my package, and it showed that they had a wait list. So what I told them is, can you at least guarantee me for the next batch on the wait list, because FedEx lost my shit? And they're like, no, we can't do absolutely nothing about that.
Wow.
And they just refunded me outright. It was one of those situations where I didn't want a refund. I wanted the figure. I hit up one of my buddies, Carlos, and he has good connections with other fellow collectors and stuff. And I was like, dude, do you happen to know anybody that has a Gomez of Death that's not asking for like ridiculous amounts? And he's like, let me ask around. And then he came back and he told me, hey, I have a dude, but he's asking for $275. but I could get them down to 230. And I was like, let's do it. Just because I wanted the figure so bad.
Mhm.
And to be honest with you, man, to this day, I don't regret doing it. It's a fucking awesome figure, and he goes for like $300. It's just one of those things. So yeah, I would say probably like recent Shane piece,
Uh,
that guy right there. But I
is he
mean,
the
it's
most? Is he the most expensive figure of that size that you've paid for?
yeah, yeah,
Because
absolutely.
that's how it is. Like with the Death Note, he of as far as 112 scale, he is the most expensive figure at 125
Yeah,
that I've ever
but you
paid
guys,
for.
your guy was loose and stuff. I mean, if he would have been packaged and stuff, would you have paid more? That's the question.
Um,
If he was
maybe
like
because
mint
like
in box,
the like I remember it was like they had the only other ones I saw, it was like maybe one or two, and they were asking like 225, 250, and I just, even though I wanted it, I was like, I can't. That's way too much. Like I still had a bit of self control, but
yeah,
but yeah, that's why I
you
just
held back.
jumped on the 125. Yeah,
You
because
held
I think
back.
they were all like like previously open, so I wasn't buying anyone new in box. Like I wasn't getting it
Oh,
from any place.
yeah. Nah, in that case is different, But yeah, with this Gomez of Death, man, like I honestly don't regret doing it, man. It's such an awesome piece. You know, if I ever get like a nice Bruce Lee head, I can pop it on there and have like a
Mhm.
super articulated Bruce Lee. It's just a badass piece. And then things like this, for example, I don't get a lot of Mayfex, but one thing that's big with me in the '80s was Dark Knight Returns. I remember reading those comics from Frank Miller, and I love the story. How gritty and how dark Batman got, and to the lengths that he went in that story. And this figure right here, man, this old Dark Knight Returns Bruce Wayne, this is amazing, man.
Yeah,
The
that's the
level
one
of
that came with
detail.
the. Did he come with the Bruce Wayne head too?
Yeah, he comes with a Bruce Wayne head. This cape is amazing, dude. It has the wire on the seams. It's just fantastic, man. And if you
Yeah.
see the stuff like toy photography wise out there, like with like Sergeant Bananas and some people have done some crazy shit. And this is kind of like just a taste of what we were talking about when we justify purchases because
Mhm.
we're already thinking about how we're going to display our figures. Mythic Legions, and you own it before I do, released Arethyr. And in Arethyr, they had their official release of the horses. They had Atheon, which is Arethyr's flame horse, and they have Balius,
Which
which is the
I
which
haven't
is the
opened him yet, but yeah.
oh man, Atheon is awesome. Yeah, you have Balius right there. See, I haven't opened my Balius, but I just got him last week. And one of the ideas I already have in my head for Balius was to have Batman riding
Oh,
Valius.
that would be
But I was
perfect.
gonna remove the harness and all that stuff because if I remember correctly, I gotta go back and Google and stuff. I don't think the horse he was riding, I think it was a
Had a
wild
saddle.
horse. I don't think he had a saddle. And I'm pretty sure it was a brown horse, or was it a stallion? Was it a
No,
black
I think it was a brown. I want to say
a
it was a
brown
brown
horse?
horse. Yeah, memory
So
serves right.
that's kind of the thing, you know what I'm saying? Like I'm already thinking about putting this guy on Balius
Uh,
riding horseback, dude, with like some flames in the background and debris, and he's like riding out of like some freaking battle that he just got out of, and that's the kind of sickness that's I know a lot of collectors don't see things that way.
no, of
Um,
course. Yeah.
one thing that you know I remember back in the day, I used to have this whole back and forth with collectors on forums where people buy figures and they just do that museum pose where they just pose their
Hmm.
figure with their arms out, looking forward. They look like a fucking mannequin. And I
Hmm.
was like, what is the point of buying an action figure if you're just gonna museum pose them shits? Like, do some crazy shit, like put them in like a running pose or a jumping pose, or a shooting pose.
Hmm.
But these people, they do that museum shit. So, and that's one of the things why articulation has always been so key with me. And that's why if you would see the amount of statues that I've owned in my life,
Hmm.
and to this day I don't own any. I mean, I just pre-ordered and I'm paying for it little by little. Actually, as a gift for Father's Day, my wife watches this video. I hope she keeps her promise. She told me, because she always swears up and down that she'll never buy me a collector. And I don't know if you noticed, but with Google Analytics, your phone listens to your conversations.
Oh, of course.
So if you're on social media, shit comes up that you were having a conversation with your wife or with someone around your phone. Shit comes up on the phone, and you're like, "The fuck?" So my wife's been getting all these Sideshow collectibles ads on her phone, and she's like, "Why am I getting these Sideshow collectible ads?" And particularly, it's like Thundercats, Hot Toys, the stuff I collect. So there's this Iron Studios did a Thundercats line, and they have a Thundercats mini diorama in 1/10 scale, which is like the Thundercats emblem, and it's like the head from Cat Slayer, but it's like debris, like if Cat Slayer got knocked down, and then it has Lion-O standing on top of it. The emblem lights up, and it's Lion-O holding up the lights, his sort of omens, and he has Snarf next to him. And my wife's like, "Look, just buy it, and then I'll give you money when I start getting paid, because right now I'm not working, whatever." But I was like, even if you don't give me money, I'm gonna get it, because it's I love Thundercats, and it's something that I want to have, you know. And that's another example of the addiction. Like, I bought the 5 point of articulation reaction figures from Super 7. I bought the Thundercats ones. I'm never gonna open them. But if you look at them in the package, dude, the card art is beautiful, bro. It's like these paintings of the characters, and then the character is like in the little bubble, and it just brings you back to when you go to Toys R Us and you find the 1980s Star Wars figures on the pegs and stuff like that. So I'll never open them. I'll probably wallpaper them in like my Thundercats throne when I have that display option in my home. So I've been getting those, but I'm really not going to be like buying these 5 points of articulation toys, because they don't do much for me. And, ironically, I used to have those when I was little, but I just kind of evolved. I want to have super articulation, super detail in my stuff.
I definitely feel like, especially when you were showing like the Batman, because like last year when I got to that point where it was like, no, I gotta change the way that I'm spending money. I had a Big Bad Toy Store account with just a list of pre-orders. It was just, and that Batman was one of the victims. And and I just went through and I was like, delete, cancel. And it was like I had multiple sites. You got Hobby Link Japan, you got Big Bad Toy Stores. So it was like jumping back and forth and making sure, okay, what do I have on pre-order, and let's just get rid of it. But I definitely feel like when you talk about like the nostalgia of those certain figures, like one big thing for me is like Final Fantasy. And whenever I see the figures that come out, it's like I want them, but I know that I can't pay $150 for a figure anymore. I'm not going to be doing that. And so it's like it's really, I think, about finding the balance, and like because I know there's some collectors who have no problem buying something and selling it, and it's like, God bless you guys, like all the power to you, because I don't have that ability. But the people that could say, yeah, I bought this and this and this, and after a certain time, now I'm ready to part with this and then bring something else in. Like, I wish I had that ability, but I think it all stems from going back to just, these are the toys that you have. You have it for this certain time, and just kind of having that connection with it, it makes it harder. But
yeah, you have a bigger appreciation for toys, that's for sure. I mean, and I had that at one point in my life, but like you and I we're a little bit apart in age. I'm 45, you're a little bit younger. So I think it's just I got to a point in my life where I'm okay with having to say goodbye to certain things. And later on in my life, the things that I'm trying to achieve and the point in my life where I'm trying to get to is going to allow me the opportunity to obtain those things again. So I guess that's one of the reasons why it's one of those like that song from Fast and the Furious is like till I see you again. That's kind of what I'm
Mhm.
saying to my toys. Um, and you can have that too, man. Like you could get to a point where somewhere in your life, either your toy photography or your creative work gets you to another economic level, and you have your home and stuff like that, and you can actually splurge and say, okay, now I'm going to do me. Now I'm going to get these
Yeah.
things and have this nice collection that I've always wanted.
Yeah, and
Um,
I think that's like the next step in like the recovery process that I'm on, because I'm already at the point where I can see something and I don't have that. It's like that urge that I need it. I need, or if I see someone post something on Instagram and it's like, oh, that's a great toy. I could imagine what I could do with it. And it's like I'm already like past that. I think like the next step in the process, it's like being able to say, okay, I don't, this is just sitting in a tub, nothing's happening with it. It's time to move on. And just to have, because like, we talk a lot about the Thundercats pieces that are coming out. And those are something that I still look forward to getting. But I'm not gonna like, I'll be set with just having the Thundercats. Like, give me the main team, all the other ancillary characters. Okay, that's fine. I don't really need them. Just give me the main team of good guys. Give me
the mutants.
the mutants. Give me Mumra, and that's it. I'm good. You know,
So you're good. Like when you say you're good, like you don't need Linkso.
I
You
don't
don't
need
need.
links. So if they
You don't
do
need
the
Bengali.
Moon attacks, if they ever come out, I don't need them.
Okay,
All I
but
would
you do want
all
Jaga. You want like the
Yeah,
main
give
team.
me like a Jaga. I would be, because like I own the original set that came out. I got like the Lion-O, the Panthro.
The Mattel
Um,
ones.
yeah, but I'll be fine once I have like Chitara, Tigra. You said Jaga, even with a Snarf. Like I won't get the Wily Cat and Wily Kit because I already have the original, so I don't see a need. Even if they come with like different things, I don't see that
Yeah.
need to get another pair. So like even in that, it's like I'm already focused on, okay, when
With
this comes
those
out,
two, it's
this is
going to
what I'll
be
just get.
tricky. It's going to be tricky because they came with so much stuff because it was a Comic Con exclusive from
Mhm.
Mattel, and I don't know if I mentioned to you Scott Knightlick, which was the brand manager for Mattel when when they had still done and announced the Club Third Earth, which was the Thundercats line from Mattel.
Mhm.
He has a YouTube channel. I think it's called Spectre Creative, and he showed not too long ago what their game plan was with Club Third Earth, and they were planning. They had like a 5 year stretch planned, and they were going to eventually do Cat's Lair.
Mhm.
So it's interesting to see that Mattel had a real big buy-in on that toy line. Um, and with Thundercats, for me, man, like I watch that thing pretty much on a daily. I'm
So
trying to
you're in
my
for
job,
everyone, right?
dude. Absolutely, that's another shame piece. I pre-ordered 2 Thunder Tanks,
Woo! You might have to edit that part out.
but I'm flex paying them shits, so
Uh-huh.
I don't feel it. But my wife is like, "Yeah, yeah, I'm glad you did that," because what my wife has the buy-in with the toy collecting is that she sees, because her and I we did a toy show not too long ago, and it was
Mhm.
awesome. It was such a blessing because I was able to unload pretty much like all the loose stuff that I had that was like older toys and fodder that I just didn't really care about anymore. And I went to a local, not a local, it's like an hour and a half drive from here, but I did like a toys park and swap where I parked my car, we got a tent, and I put out stuff. Dude, I made like 3 times what I thought I was gonna make at that show.
Mhm.
And that's when she kind of got the buy-in of like, oh, okay, well, look, babe, when something comes out that you like it, just buy an extra one so that you can
Mhm.
sell that one and it kind of like pays for yours.
Has that
So
ever backfired on you? Have you ever purchased a double of something that you expected to gain a certain amount of money and it never did? It just fell flat?
I mean, it happens all the time, but the thing about the toy collecting and the way it works is such a volatile um, market. For example, right now, I think my perception of the reason why the secondary market has blown up so much is because of COVID and the stimulus money. There are people out there that are struggling and they're having a lot of difficult times, unemployment, whatnot. But then there's people that are taking advantage. There's people that are literally not working because they're getting so much money in unemployment, and they'd rather get an unemployment check than go work.
To work it, yeah.
And it's something that is crazy. Then there's people that are getting stimulus checks that they're still working, and that's just buffer money. So I think that's kind of, it's helped the economy in the sense that people are throwing all this money away, getting toys, getting baseball cards, football cards, memorabilia, things that they couldn't buy before. So they're just like, oh, thanks, Uncle Sam. Now I can buy all this shit. So the secondary market has blown up with collectibles. And I think eventually that bubble is going to burst and things are going to go down again. But yeah, absolutely. The market, I've had things that I bought two of, and then it's like, oh shit, like I can probably make $40 profit on it now when it was like 4 times the price. But I don't see it as a loss, because you put something on ice, eventually that's going to gain value again. When interest is lost, perfect example is this Motu Classics. I literally sold if I would have held on to my Motu Classics for a year until after COVID, I would have made a fortune, because I sold Motu Classics, and I sold most of my Motu Classics actually to a guy in the Netherlands, out of all places, that bought the figures from me between 25 to 35. I think the most he paid for certain figures was 45. Had I held on to those figures till today, I would have made like 4 times what I made selling the stuff to him.
Wow.
And it just goes to show, you just never know which direction the market is going. But right now, with the whole Netflix Master of the Universe animated series, the Motu Origins figures hitting retail, it's exposed this entire new group of people that had no idea that there was Master of the Universe classics, which in my opinion are like 12 times better than the Motu Origins figures. And so now they're like, oh shit, I didn't know that stuff was around. So, and then with the stimulus money, they're just throwing money at this stuff, man. Yeah. So
I still got my checks in a box.
To answer your question, yeah, it's to answer your question. I'm just like, yeah, I've had that situation happen. It's backfired, but I've never been like, oh man, I fucked up. I shouldn't have done that, because I just like throw it in a bin, and I wait a few years, and it eventually will pay off. But do I do it on a regular? No. I do it with things like these HasLabs, for example. Like I did buy I bought the Razor Crest, the HasLab Razor Crest.
Which was like
it's the Mandalorian's ship, dude.
Oh, okay.
It's his ship. Hasbro made a Razor Crest, which is like, it looks like a prop from the show, but it's in 3 3/4. So it's for the 3-inch figures. And it was a HasLab project where you had to like crowdfund. You had to pay for it in advance for it to get made. It's shipping sometime in the fall this year. I got that. I got like a Skeletor, like a jumbo Skeletor, like it was like forget the name of it. It was like a crossover with some samurai robot looking line where he's like a robot Skeletor, and he shoots his fist out and stuff. I forget the name of it now, man. It's crazy. Samurai. That's crazy that I forgot the name of it. But anyways, that was an exclusive for like Mattel Creations or something like that they have now, where they do these one-offs that are crowdfunded. I bought that because I think it's going to be worth money. But I didn't buy doubles. I just bought one, for investment purposes. But I don't do that on a regular. The Thunder Tank, absolutely, because I do feel that once that thing comes out and people see it in hand, people that didn't get it, they're like, "Oh
They're
my
gonna want
god,
it.
I want that." And even Cornboy told me that when we were having our talk on our first meeting. It's like that Thunder Tank, dude. It's gonna be like $1,000, and people are gonna cough up the money because there's not gonna be any more. It's just gonna be the pre-sales. If you bought it, if you didn't, you're screwed. So now you're
Yeah.
gonna have to pay whatever people are asking for it. So yeah, and it's one of those things where I know that scalpers and that kind of activity is frowned upon in the toy community at some point, but man, I'm not rich, dude. I don't have money coming out of my ass. I don't have a money tree. So if I want to own certain things I want to own, there are certain decisions that I have to make to sell certain things. And if some dumbass is going to go out there and pay 4 or 5 times what something costs, dude, it's their loss, my gain. You know what I mean? I've been
Yeah.
there. I've been that dumbass at some points in my life where I've paid some guy, some guys made disgusting money off of me for something that I absolutely wanted. So it's like it goes full circle,
Mhm.
and I think it's one of those things where you have to feed the beast. It's like, I have bills to pay, I have a child to raise, I have a child to get to college through, I have adult kids that once in a while I have to help out monetarily. So I can't just have the luxury of just buying and buying things
Yeah.
without having some sort of return. So yeah, man, I've bought and sold to this day, and it still happens. It's not like where I go and post up at a Target and like wipe out their shelves just to sell shit. No, I don't do that.
Mhm.
But I'll pre-order doubles, you know, sometimes triples of certain things that I think are gonna be worth more. At the end, I might end up trading them to a friend, or I might end up getting a nice return on it. But it's never to the point where I'll beat myself up
Yeah.
because I bought an extra.
Which is
You know?
funny because like that's how I got the Wiley Kit and Wiley Cat. I bought it off of you. And can you believe when we were talking about it, thinking about it, that's another thing I have never opened. From the
Really?
moment I bought it from you, I have never opened it. And it's
You
like
gotta
I
open them
think
shits.
it's yeah, I think it's like the time where it's like now that like I've really just cut out buying other stuff, it's time to give attention to things that I actually have. Because there's a lot of figures that I own that people have never seen.
Absolutely, man. Like that's a perfect example. If you're taking a sabbatical and you're at this point in life where you're accepting that you don't need things right away, dude, enjoy and get that buy-in. Like get that get that experience from the stuff that you have. Don't keep
Huh?
it in their plastic prisons and their cardboard prisons. Like open them shits, play with them,
Mm-hmm.
man. You know,
Because
get that
right now
iStro out there, man.
I'm really like with the whole 3D printing, I'm really just like tinkering with it and trying to learn more.
Yeah.
Like this is like brick wall that I made. And so
Oh
like I want to
wow.
play around with actually making sets that like, this is a lot easier to store than a piece of foam that's this thick.
Yeah, yeah.
So if I can make something that's like collapsible, I was working on this last night, like trying to make like an elevator. I don't know if it's
Mhm.
too close. So just printing pieces, and then eventually I want to go so far as to have like where I could have it on a rail that they open and have lights and stuff. So
Right.
I'm really just trying to see how I can kind of take a step forward without resorting to just buying stuff and really just focusing on the things that I'm capable of doing now. You
Yeah,
muted
I
for a
hear
second.
you.
Oh,
Yeah, I hear you. I definitely think it's something like you said, if you're you know like holding back and you're not buying anything. And it's funny when you mentioned, and I respect you for that big time where it's like your wife is asking you, what do you want? And you're telling her one GI Joe. I would be like, honey, at least these three guys.
Mhm.
But the fact that you're like, I'm happy with this one GI Joe,
Well, to be
man.
honest, that's the one I had her buy. I bought myself the Viper, not the Cobra Viper, the Guard. So I technically
The
have two coming in, but like I
Did you
bought
get
one in
which guard did you? You
the
mean a
blue
Cobra
one.
Trooper?
Yeah,
A Cobra
the
Trooper?
Trooper. Yeah, yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, because they got the Vipers, but those were like Target exclusives, and they're insane online.
I can
Although
imagine.
Target is going to be re-releasing them, so it might be a little easier to come across. Those I to this day I haven't been able to get. I don't have any Vipers in my collection, but I have pretty much everything that's come out, even the Major Blood, which recently came out, and now they're starting to show up in droves. So it looks
Hmm.
like finally Hasbro kind of put that whole chaotic thing with Target to rest, because it looks like they're producing a lot more and sending them out to stores. So
And that's the
scalp
thing that's. Oh, go ahead.
no, I'm saying so scalpers, they had their run, but I think
Mhm.
that the secondary market is not going to be like this huge thing anymore for these Cobra Island figures from Target
Yeah.
anymore.
And that's one of the things that I kind of had to come to learn in collecting, because I know we have different types of collectors, those who like army build, those who want like the full collection, and one thing was like knowing that all I need is one figure. Like if there's a guard, I don't need five Cobra Troopers, because at the end of the day I could always just use a tripod, the camera, and Photoshop, like just put a little marking where I have the figure and move them around, and make that one figure into like five figures, and still make the picture look like it's actually real and there's five troops there. And so
That's a
that's
lot of
been
work,
helpful.
though.
Because like when I ordered the horse originally, I wanted to get multiple horses, and I was like, why would I just do that? Like, let me just use Photoshop, double the horse up, and I can make it work. And so, yeah, like you said, it's more work, but at the end of the day, you're saving a lot more money. And so,
Yeah,
finding those
absolutely.
ways to kind of like, how can I get around with having to buy more and more toys? Those are the things that I try to look at and consider.
I, I hear you. So just out of curiosity, what was that figure that you had your wife buy for you?
It was a Cobra Commander,
Oh, okay.
because um, now that I have the 3D printer, I actually found where you can 3D print the hooded Cobra Commander. So like I want to try to 3D print that head and paint it so that I can have, because I love that classic look, and I wish that
Yeah.
the figures would be produced with the hood on. Um, but yeah, like I'm excited for that, because like GI Joe, that's my thing, and so
Did
you
you
know
see
I'm
the recent reveal? They did the Yojo Friday or Yojo Thursday, and they revealed the new Roadblock, which is basically like the closest thing to the 80s Roadblock ever. He looks
really.
amazing. Yeah, man. He's got the tank top. He's got that awesome 80s look, like in the face sculpt, the brand new face sculpt.
Mhm.
It's got the big, huge Gatling gun. And it looks to me like within classifieds, they're going to be releasing certain variants that are a little bit more of a nod to the 80s look
Mhm.
versus doing like a full-fledged 80s line,
But
because
is it the
that
same face, or is it a
no
totally different
no,
face?
like if you look at the first Roblox that came out that looked like it was a space marine with all these
Mhm.
weird metallics and stuff, and you look at the new Roadblock, he was only available through Hasbro Pulse and through Amazon. I think you could still pre-order him. Um, and he looks amazing. He comes with a removable army helmet. He has the big Gatling gun. He's just got a
Mhm.
camo tank top and the battle fatigue pants. But the face, dude, it's 80s cartoon Roadblock, man. It's like a heavy gunner, heavy artillery. I think they call him heavy artillery Roadblock.
Hmm.
So things like that, and like for example, the Commando Snake Eyes with Timber that recently
Mhm.
went up for pre-order. So little by little, they're introducing these 80s iterations of the characters that are not so modern looking. And those are the ones that I'm more gravitating towards
Yeah.
because, for example, I don't think they could do anything more 80s to this Zartan. I think it's perfect. I'm going to, take some paint and do some customs. And that's another thing that I want to be dabbling a little bit more into. Um, of course, doing my art, my illustrations and stuff, but I want to get into customizing stuff more. So I think this one's a simple one, just throwing on some gray or silver paint on the
Mhm.
armors just to make them look more like 80s Zartan, putting some silvers and grays here, making guns instead of matte black, making them
Yeah.
more like a gunmetal, you know, just experimenting with that and just like plussing up my own toys. Another thing, and that you mentioned now that you've been dabbling with the 3D printer. I recently got a MacBook Pro, and
Mhm.
I'm gonna get a ZBrush, the ZBrush application, and I'm gonna try to dabble into 3D sculpting, and I want to
Nice.
see what comes about that. I want to focus mainly on doing like alternate head sculpts for
Mhm.
characters, maybe some accessories and stuff like that, and kind of see where that goes. I really want to see somehow, some way where I can get into the toy industry with my art. You
Yeah.
know,
I
um,
tried I tried dipping my toe in sculpting with Blender. It's like a free program to
mhm.
use, and that thing is tough. It's tough, and I almost felt like I was relearning Photoshop. But there's something about like being able to design something, and then when you print it and you see it and you have it in hand, it's cool, you know.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. But yeah, man, this has been awesome. Like I said, you and I would been talking about this for a while, planning. It's so exciting to finally get this done, get some
Yeah.
recordings done, get this content up, share it with the community, and I just can't wait to see what people think about it. Um, Definitely chime below, guys. Let me know what you think. If you think it's something that you would like to participate in the future. I'm definitely planning on having some really cool guests from the industry and fellow collectors as well on the show to talk about, our toy addiction. And thanks for tuning in, guys. It's been really fun, and we'll see you in the toy house. So, Joe, I know that you have some other shows that you do with your wife. You do unboxings, you do samplings. So,
Yeah.
tell me a little bit about that content and tell the viewers where they can find this stuff so they can watch it as well.
Yeah, well, my wife and I, she has a channel on YouTube. It's called Lady Marie's Life, spelled Maree. And there we do, like, she does a lot of different reviews, but we've been doing this segment called Snack Attack. And we usually just try weird snacks and candies. Like our most recent one that's going to be coming out soon, we try Japanese candy. So that's pretty fun. And then we also have another show that we do with a friend of ours, and it's called the Jiggle Biggle. I don't know if you can see the shirt that I had because we were recording earlier. And this is where we do movie reviews every Friday, Saturday, and Sunday live on YouTube. So come check it out. We have a good time and we have jokes.
Is that how you spell it? Did I
Yeah,
get it
Jiggle
right?
Biggle,
No,
Jigg.
Lady
Oh, that
Marie's.
yes.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so Lady Marie's, guys. Lady Marie's live, and then show them the shirt.
The shirt is the Jiggle Biggle, and this is our logo I designed.
That's awesome, dude. That's really cool. Yeah, man. It's during this COVID. One of the things that I wish I would have been doing a little bit more was doing this kind of content. Um, I can see that you and your wife have found this awesome kind of exit, like departure from this craziness that has been COVID and quarantine, and you guys have made the best of it by creating content and doing stuff together. And I applaud you guys for that. Because it's
Thank you.
it's fun, and you found that light, you know, at the end of the tunnel from all this darkness and all this crazy shit that has been COVID-19. It looks like finally we're trickling into a more of a new normal in life. People are getting the
Definitely.
vaccines and all this stuff. So, hopefully, I'm just one thing I can't wait to is to get out there to the cons, man. Like I know New York Comic Con is happening this year. I've heard New York is not the same. A friend of mine's,
Not at
his
all.
wife's mom recently passed, and fortunately, she had to fly up to New York for the funeral. And she said that New York was just like a wasteland.
Yeah.
It was very different.
No,
It wasn't like
crime
hustle
is
and bustle.
crime is definitely up, and I think that you know criminals have gotten more brazen. Like you hear a lot of things happening in broad daylight. So it's definitely like this time that we've had under lockdown, and especially with things going on, there's been a definite shift in New York, and but I hope to be able to see it turn around. But
Yeah.
I'm glad that you had me on the show. I'm honored that I can take part, and we could have this conversation. And honestly, like the one thing, like when we were talking about it, the one thing that I really appreciate is the fact that each there it goes. Each episode is gonna be different because you're gonna have different people telling their story, and I
Yeah.
think that it's a great thing to hear because it's kind of like I would equate it kind of like if there's any wrestling fans when that new show Dark Side of the Ring, where it's like you see the other side of the wrestling ring, and you hear all these stories that you had no idea about, and it's
Yeah.
like in the same way we're used to seeing people post pictures and do dioramas and do this and that, but this is almost like going behind the curtain and seeing how exactly it's affecting people's lives and their loved ones and things like that. So I'm all for looking forward to see the guests that you have in the future and hearing all the stories that they have to tell.
Yeah, and I'm excited about the future, what has to hold for this as well, and just growing this show. Let's see how the community feels about it. But again, it's been awesome. Always great to talk to you, man, and stay safe out there.
Well, thank you. You too, man.
Take care, buddy.
All right, man.